I'll be your MC for this evening. Now, before we start tonight, I'd like to invite a representative of the local Indigenous community, Selena Walker, to welcome us to country.
Thank you. Yuma, Galaganya Jolena Walker. Darawinuna. Hello, my name is Selena Walker and this is Ngunnawal Country. I want to first start by acknowledging my elders, the Ngunnawal elders, and pay respect to my elders past, present and future. Also want to acknowledge the recent passing of my grandmother, Auntie Agnes Shea, who was the most senior Ngunnawal elder here. I want to acknowledge any other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that are with us here this evening. Welcome my brothers, sisters, aunts and uncles. And of course I'd like to extend that to all of our non-Indigenous friends that have joined us. Welcome. The Ngunnawal community are the traditional custodians of Canberra and the region. You may not be aware that the Ngunnawal Nation is made up of several family groups and not just individuals who represent this country. Therefore, as a community, we have an elected body known as the United Ngunnawal Elders Council to represent us, along with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elected body of the ACT. This is important for you to understand and acknowledge, for our identity is a collective identity. There are other Indigenous and non-Indigenous people from around the nation, the country and the world who have come to live on Ngunnawal land. I would like to acknowledge and welcome you all. The tradition of welcoming the people to country is a practice that was handed down by our ancestors, old people and elders from the beginning of time. Before entering another person's country, you would first announce your arrival and not enter until the traditional owner formally welcomed you. The reason for this practice was to protect your spirit whilst in another person's country and also to show respect for the country of which you were entering. It's wonderful to see that this practice is now recognised and respected. Guess it's not like entering into someone's home unless you're first invited. The Ngunnawal people, as within all Aboriginal people, have a great heritage that we would like to share with all Australians from every walk of life. As you are aware, Canberra means meeting place, and Canberra has been a place of gathering for many Aboriginal tribes of Australia to come together to deal with important business and also for ceremonial purposes. Our Ngunnawal ancestors believe in the importance of people gathering to build relationships, share knowledge, and to celebrate the gift of heritage and history. We believe it's important for all to recognise our unique history and to gain understanding that our land is our heritage and how loss of the lands has disconnected so many Aboriginal people from their spiritual links, cultural heritage and identity. Reconciliation is not just a word, it's an action, and it's a human rights movement. As an Aboriginal person in this country, I've only been counted as a human being for 58 years. Let me repeat this while this sinks in. I, as a beautiful black woman in Australia, have only been counted as a human being for 58 years. I'm only 44. We are very young in our reconciliation journey here in Australia, but we're on the right path. By incorporating proper cultural protocols like welcome to country, smoking ceremonies, didgeridoo playing, etc., we are on the road to true reconciliation. It does still hurt me though that my dad was born a tree, that my grandmother was a mother in this country before she was a human being. So I ask you all to take a moment and think about how old you are, how old your elders are, and how old your children are, and what you're doing to contribute to that reconciliation human rights movement. The referendum that happened a few years ago was another huge milestone in our reconciliation journey. Not the result that we wanted, but it did bring a lot of truth-telling. Helped us to identify where we have to focus our efforts and what states need the most amount of help. I'm so proud to be a Canberran. I'm proud of my fellow Canberrans for the yes vote here in the ACT. Still a lot of work to be done, but it's a demonstration that the work that my grandmother and many other elders in this community have done towards reconciliation can influence that change that we all want. Remembering that that vote was not a vote for me to be Aboriginal, was not a vote for me to be a traditional owner. It was a vote to edit a document, and that's what Australia said no to. So we'll recalibrate, we'll reassess, we'll find another way forward to continue to fight for First Nations justice that's going to work for all Australians. I stand on the shoulders of giants, and I want to honour those giants. It is a shared history, so there has to be shared accountability. If we continue to live in shame here in Australia, we are never going to progress forward. I don't want my boys to be up here in 20, 30 years' time fighting and advocating for the same things that I am today, that my grandmother has done for the past 60 years, my ancestors for the past 200 years. That change happens with us. So I encourage you all to continue to have those conversations, have those awkward discussions where learning and understanding which is what true reconciliation actually is, lies. It lies in a simple yarn. I want to highlight that yous will not remember me tonight for the words that I have said. Yous will remember me for how I made you feel. We are humans, it's our emotions that make us human, and it's our emotions that create long-term memories in our brains. That's where the change lies. However I made you feel this evening is what you need to carry forward to influence the changes that this country needs, that our kid needs. So thank you very much for inviting me here to the Welcome to Country. I unfortunately can't stay for the rest of the event. I do have kin care of 9 teenagers. I didn't stutter, I said 9, hence the grey hair at 44. And it's feeding time at the zoo, so I better get there before it turns into a rugby league game. But thank you very much for inviting me here to the Welcome to Country. I want to congratulate all the nominees and the recipients of the awards. The work that you do is incredible, and it's great to have that recognition. So on behalf of the Ngunnawal people, in the spirit of reconciliation, Yumalandi Yunanga Yerabu Yangu, which means Yamali footprints on our land now, or in other words, welcome to country. When we talk of footprints, we don't speak about our physical footprint. We speak of the work that we do today for the people to follow tomorrow, in the footprints of our ancestors. So think about what footprint you would like to leave. And just remember that when you set foot on the land of the Ngunnawal people, or anywhere in Australia, you are walking on the blood of our ancestors. So please tread lightly and treat it with respect. Thank you very much. Jinyaba.
Well, here we are in the Grand Theatre of the National Library of Australia for the much anticipated 2025 Prime Minister's Literary Awards. I am delighted to be here tonight to celebrate our homegrown literary talent. And to commence, we acknowledge and thank the Ngunnawal and Ngambri peoples, the traditional custodians of the land we meet on today, and express gratitude to Selina Walker for her generous and passionate welcome, reminding us that there is still so much work to be done. Now, before we get into the excitement of tonight, let's just take a moment to recognise the monumental creative energy that's brought us here. Creative Australia received 645 entries for this year's award. Yes, you heard right, 645. That is more books than I've read. That's more books than I've read. To be honest, it's a lot of reading. And by the way, it is over 100 books more than the judges considered last year. So, first things first, I'd like to give a shout out to those heroes behind the scenes, our esteemed judges, who gave each book its due and undertook this mammoth task with integrity, care, and significant expertise. Now, you can spot them in the audience. They're the ones in the pale green lanyards. Green, of course, indicating the only colour they will be accepting for bribes tonight. Dame Nellie Melba on nothing. I am, of course, joking. It's all above board here. Trust me, I already did try to submit a late entry when I saw how much the prize money was, but they were having none of it. So, judges, would you please be upstanding so we can give you the round of applause that you very much deserve? Now, let's talk about the shortlisted authors, the people whose work leapt off the page and captured the attention of our judges, sometimes from the very first sentence. Many of these brilliant minds are in the room with us tonight, and we couldn't be more thrilled to celebrate you. Let's give them all a round of applause. And speaking of rewards, let's talk about that tax-free cash. In recognition of their outstanding contribution to our literary culture, each shortlisted title will receive $5,000, and tonight's winners will be taking home $80,000. Wow, yeah. So it's tax-free. Wow. I mean, judges, are you sure you don't want to reconsider? There might be a little Edith Cowan in it for you. No, nothing, won't be swayed. Now, I read on the website that this was the richest literary prize in the nation, and I thought, well, not if it keeps giving all of its money away. That's crazy, it's rich, it should be hoarding wealth and influencing elections. What's it doing? A quick housekeeping note, please do make sure your mobile phones are off or set to silent before we begin. Now a note for the winners, and you are all, of course, winners to me. Do listen closely. When your name is called, this is your moment, please take it. Walk up to the stage, shake the hands you need to shake, then hit us with a few words on the microphone. And after that, receive you won't be receiving a medal here. Go and smile for the camera over at the media wall, and before you head back to your seat and bask in the glow of your well-deserved applause. Tonight's awards celebrate excellence across children's literature, young adult literature, Australian history, poetry, non-fiction and fiction. And what's beautiful about these categories is how they reflect the diversity of voices and stories that make Australia such a vibrant and complex place. So whether you're here in person or watching online, this is our moment to celebrate that together. For those of you who are joining us from home, welcome. I'm sure you're all wearing very comfy pants. We're jealous. To the wonderful folks here at the National Library, a massive thank you for hosting tonight. And if you are watching from home, seriously, come visit. Not only is this place an architectural delight, it's also our archive of Australian writing, ideas and culture. It really is an honour for me to be here. The National Library is such a powerful institution. To quote one of our most quotable leaders, this place really is the suppository of wisdom. I only found out recently about the idea of legal deposits, so you guys probably already know this, but every book ever published in Australia must be sent here. Which is reassuring to know, I think, that whatever a book's fate may be, whether it's one of the greats or destined for the bargain bin, that one day it will get to end up here. It's like when your parents told you that the old family dog was being sent away to a farm in the countryside, but the farm's real. I mean, that's a happy ending, isn't it? I mean, all dogs go to heaven and all books go to the National Library. I myself have never written a book, but I would love to write a book. That's not strictly true, let me rephrase. I would love to have written a book. I'd love to have something to sign when I finish a gig at a writers' festival instead of being shown out the back door. But it does seem like writing a book is a lot of work. But every now and then I think, you know what, maybe I could. But to be honest, I haven't been inspired to write a book by any of the books on this short list. All the books on this short list tell gripping, authentic tales of survival and growth. They contain powerful truth-telling. They display a true mastery of language and form, yes. Do they inspire me to read more? Yes. To change the world? Yes. To want to write a book? Not really. No, the books that inspire me, and I know, if you're being honest, and I'm not the only one here, the books that inspire me are the bad ones. You know, the books that you read and it seems like the words weren't so much typed onto a page as sneezed onto it. The ones that are so riddled with cliche that you feel as though the adjectives are embarrassed to be seen next to each other. You know, the ones that make you go, not only do I think AI wrote this, but I'm starting to worry about this robot's workplace conditions. You know, I've got to get this robot signed up to the union. These are the books that really inspire me. When I read them and I go, I could write a book. And then I read the books on this short list and I go, well, maybe I can't. So thank you to the bad books for being my inspiration. There's a quote that I like about the strange ritual of book reading, and it goes like this. Have you ever realised how surreal reading a book actually is? You stare at marked slices of tree for hours on end, hallucinating vividly. It's cute, right? You might have seen it, but do you know who wrote it? No, of course, because it's not a quote from a book at all. I think I came across it as a TikTok reaction to a viral Instagram reel of a screenshot of a meme that appeared on Reddit via Twitter. And this is how we encounter so much these days. And perhaps you read a different version of it, maybe. Like so much of what we read these days, it was rewritten slightly, but completely unmoored from its original context, with no mention of the author at all, just a different image slapped on top, that one's stolen too. And we don't even care who wrote it. We just care that we were entertained for a hot second before we moved on. And that's why tonight is so important, not just to celebrate and recognise your individual efforts and these beautiful hallucinations that you've contributed to Australian culture, but to celebrate the very precious and the very human idea of authorship itself. Because if we stop caring that a person wrote something, then we stop caring when that person's works are being stolen, even if it's to train a depressed robot who hates his job. And on that note, thank you, the Twitter user Katie Oldham from Brighton, England, who wrote that tweet in December 2014. This does seem to be her greatest contribution to culture so far, but fingers crossed. Now, before we get into the juicy end of proceedings, would you please make welcome to the stage the newly appointed chair of the newly established Writing Australia Council, Larissa Behrendt.
I feel like that's a hard act to follow, but let me start by just thanking Selena Walker for her welcome and giving us a moment to be able to reflect on the 65,000 years of storytelling that the Ngunnawal have kept strong, and it feels very fitting to have a moment to reflect on how we might contribute to the next stage of that as we celebrate the best of Australian writing. Good evening, everyone. The National Library of Australia, the heart of our nation's stories, is the perfect stage for celebrating the power of literature. As chair of the National Library of Australia and the chair of Writing Australia, I'm especially proud to welcome you here because this event is about celebrating writing, reading, ideas, and the voices that shape who we are. The Prime Minister's Literary Awards have a proud history dating back to 2008, and since 2023 they've been delivered by Creative Australia under the National Cultural Policy Revive, and as of this year they're managed by Writing Australia, and we are honoured to host them here tonight. The establishment of Writing Australia is not just an exciting development for this important part of the arts ecology. It represents the establishment of the final piece of new architecture under Revive. Writing Australia is still young but very energetic, and our new council held its first meeting in August, which the Minister attended, and I wanted to acknowledge the members of the council who are with us this evening: Tommy Murphy, Sarah Holland-Batt, Tim Jarvis, Julie Pinkham and Sally Rippon. Their leadership will help shape the future of Australian writing. I also want to acknowledge the Director of Writing Australia, Winona Byrne, whose vision has been central in driving our new organisation and this event tonight with the team at Creative Australia. I'd also like to make a special acknowledgement of Adrian Collette, who isn't with us tonight, but who has steered Creative Australia with wisdom and ambition through a time of enormous transformation. As both an author and a filmmaker, and as a Yuwalarai woman and traditional owner, I know firsthand the power of storytelling. From the voices of the world's oldest living culture, carrying wisdom and resilience across generations, to the new stories being told today that are shaping the kind of future we want to create. Storytelling grounds us, challenges us, and reminds us who we are and who we might yet become. Stories challenge our assumptions, and they ensure we see ourselves in our diversity and complexity reflected honestly. And tonight's shortlist reflects a wonderful breadth of talent, and particularly amongst First Nations writers. It's a privilege to acknowledge Kylie Gatchawarawoi Mananangana, who has travelled all the way from Gapawiyak in East Arnhem Land, along with other outstanding First Nations writers, including Michaelia Saunders, Darren Ricks and Barina South. Their voices remind us that First Nations storytelling is at the heart of who we are. I would also like to acknowledge the presence of Senator Sarah Hanson-Young, who holds the arts portfolio for the Greens. But it is my great pleasure to introduce the Honourable Tony Burke, who has done more than just support the arts, he has fought for them. His passion for the arts portfolio has reinforced again and again that culture is not an optional extra. It's central to our democracy, our identity, and our well-being. And social cohesion, as we know, doesn't just come from policy, it comes from culture. It comes from the stories we share, the voices we hear, and the space the arts create for us to come together. Through the National Cultural Policy, Minister Burke has given us a framework that places the arts, and especially First Nations arts, at the centre of our national life. He understands that creativity isn't a luxury, it's the oxygen of our democracy. The National Cultural Policy, the longest standing our country has ever had, places arts and cultures at the heart of our national story, ensuring they are recognised, respected and resourced. That legacy is profound and its impact will be felt long after the applause fades. And for those of us who work in the arts, it's been clear. This is a minister who not only shows up at opening nights, the book launches and the awards, but who deeply understands why they matter. His commitment is genuine and unwavering. So tonight, as we celebrate the best of Australian literature, it is my great privilege to invite to the stage someone who has ensured that our stories continue to be treasured and nurtured, and our artists, especially our writers, are respected and supported. So please join me in welcoming the Member for Watson, Leader of Government in the House of Representatives, Minister for Home Affairs, Cybersecurity, Immigration and Citizenship, and I'm sure closest to his heart, Minister for the Arts, the Honourable Tony Burke.
Thanks so much, Larissa. Incredibly kind. Can I start by thanking Selena Walker? I know Selena had to go, but I am still always blown away when you think of the history, you think of all the things that can be said. The word we keep hearing is welcome. There's an extraordinary generosity in that, and over time as a nation, we can only hope, and writers will be a big part of making sure that we lead the way to the rest of the nation, showing that same level of generosity in return. I want to, in particular, acknowledge Senator Sarah Hanson-Young. Sarah has been there for the whole journey in the fight for cultural policy, and been at the launches, but also been in every committee, in every speech, a fearless advocate for the arts, and I want to acknowledge that. I should also just say, Alex, thank you so much for the joy with which you are doing this tonight. My first one of these awards was 2013 when I was a brand new arts minister, and award after award I gave, and then the thank you speeches were different people smashing the government and me personally for policies they didn't like. And I always arrive with trepidation, but to arrive with a bit of fun in advance of all the speeches, thank you. Really appreciate it. We're in one of the great cultural institutions of Australia, the great collecting institutions that I'm responsible for as Minister with the Library. Larissa, I want to acknowledge your role as the chair here and acknowledge Claire Wright, who's also up for some of her writing tonight, but also as the chair of the National Museum. I am glad that we have a writer chairing the library and a historian chairing the museum. It's a long time before we've had those things, and I'm really glad that we do. Not long ago, I read about another one of our cultural institutions. There's a great book that Tom McElroy's put together called Blue Poles, and it tells the history of Pollock, Jackson Pollock, and the work and it being sold, and then the political frenzy of the culture war at the time. Culture wars are not new to this country. They just usually look embarrassing in hindsight. And in Blue Poles, there is a beautiful line that I've often quoted, but it's there in black and white, and I'm glad. It's from Gough Whitlam, where he says, "Our other objectives are a means to an end. The enjoyment of the arts is an end in itself." And while that is so true, and the arts would not have to be any more than there to be enjoyed, in cultural policy we acknowledge that the arts actually does deliver a whole lot more than the enjoyment of the arts. The cultural policy, as Larissa mentioned, it's the first one to survive any length of time. when we put on the cover, where's the cover? Behind me there, that it was Australia's cultural policy for the next 5 years, that was in fact more ambitious than it sounded. No cultural policy had lasted 5 years. Creative Nation from Paul Keating lasted about 1.5 years. And was then abolished at the change of government. Creative Australia from Julia Gillard and Simon Crean lasted about 6 months, and that was the time that I was Arts Minister. Change of government, it was abolished. To have a cultural policy that has survived an election and is continuing to be implemented is something Australia hasn't had before. It's an exciting time, and right now we're at the moment where the structural changes, there's still a whole lot of recommendations we're still implementing, but the structural changes to Creative Australia are now complete. So the philanthropic body Creative Partnerships, so Australia Council changed to Creative Australia, Creative Partnerships brought in so that you had one body dealing with government-funded, commercial and philanthropic. First Nations Board established, so for the first time you had First Nations ownership of a budget with making First Nations decisions within Creative Australia. Then you had the establishment of creative workplaces acknowledging finally that working in the arts should not be seen simply as a hobby. It should be allowed to be seen as a profession and a career. And to make sure with creative workplaces that if you're going to view it as a workplace and a career, it's not simply about remuneration, it's also about safety at work and safety in all its forms. And then the two bodies to look at areas that had always been underinvested in and not adequately understood by the Old Australia Council. And that was Music Australia, acknowledging that contemporary music had never really found a serious place in funding. You know, if someone suddenly got an opportunity to play at a festival overseas, the decision has to be made in the next week. You can't have systems that rely on, well, you'll be able to apply for the next round of grants in 6 months' time. So Music Australia allowed things to be looked at in a different way, and Writing Australia is there to acknowledge that writing has forever been the most underfunded part of federal arts funding, and we had to say, draw a line under that and say no more, no more. And so those changes are now complete, with Writing Australia being established. The structure is not the end of a story, it's the end of my bit, and it's a handing over to the board members who were announced before for their work in working out how can we best foster writing. Because as I said before, that quote from Gough is true, but it also understates. While it's true that the enjoyment of the arts is an end in itself, the arts itself delivers our understanding of self, delivers our information to understand each other, delivers the invitation for the world to understand us. Give the simplest example. Claire Wright's book, Nukudaruk. I do secret reconnaissance missions to the cultural institutions without telling the chairs or the CEOs, largely just to have fun. And so after reading the book about blue poles, I ducked into the library, I ducked into the National Gallery. Before I went there, I went out to the museum. And having read Claire's book, when I looked at the bark petition and saw the signatures, for the first time I saw personalities. I knew the difference between the different people whose signatures I saw. I had an understanding of the meaning of the artwork that was around the perimeter. Now that's more than enjoyment. That's a connection to Australia that I have for something that, let's face it, is my business. Petitions are petitions to my line of work. That's what they are. But had never understood it until it had been written. And that gift is the gift we celebrate tonight. The other thing that is so extraordinary, and Alex actually alluded to this in her opening comments, is the fact that your art form is the only one of the art forms that, even though we're holding a bit of paper or a Kindle or whatever reading device we might be using, we are not in fact interacting with the physicality of it. You're entering directly into our imaginations. So every other art form relies on one of the senses. We hear the music, we see the visual art, we watch the dance, but the entire world of the poem, of the novel, of the piece of literature, the entire universe of that lives within our mind and is pictured and felt and hurt within. The gift of that is put so beautifully in one of the children's books that we honour tonight. I have read more of these than you might expect across the board. And for those of you who put forward the poetry, some of you would be aware since I've been 18, I read a poem out loud every day. They are genius, and because I read them out loud, I never know where they're going as I start, because I don't give myself the preview. And I have a habit of doing it at the start of the day. I often don't start the day feeling real well because there is some serious grief and power in the words of that poetry. But it's extraordinary, just extraordinary work, and I want to acknowledge that. But instead of quoting any of the poems, I just want to quote from the children's book, A Leaf Called Grief, because having gone through the love of the physicality of a shiny leaf and then the horror of it breaking up, the story finishes with the understanding of imagination and the memory of a single leaf called grief that broke free from the tree, danced and swayed and floated its way down into Bear's heart, where he knew he could hold on to it forever. You allow, as writers, what you have imagined to be held on to forever. It is a beautiful gift to Australia. The children's work that starts in Yolngu country allows story and language, and I shouldn't really put them as two separate concepts, to live not simply for Yolngu children, but to be passed through to children all around Australia as an invitation to learn, an invitation to understand, but an invitation to taste, to smell, to hear, to feel. And in doing that, tonight we celebrate all 5 of the pillars of cultural policy. We celebrate First Nations first, the foundation that is the invitation for every opportunity we have in creativity in Australia. The fact that there is a place for every story and a story for every place, and so many of those stories are only told because of yourselves. The centrality of the artist in making sure that we need you, and the training of you from the moment you first became readers right through to the honing of your craft as writers is something where we need to do better in making sure you can have a career, and a successful career in doing what you do. In the strong cultural institutions like the one that we are in right now, and in engaging to the audience, because in engaging with the audience and reaching people and making them feel thoughts and know characters and understand moments that they only are able to reach because of you, is the other reason beyond the Goff reason that you have that we need to back you. Because what you do is so much more than the enjoyment of the arts itself. There are 2 different of the fiction categories which went to this concept. There was something in Fiona McFarlane's book Highway 13, and in Michelle de Crest's Theory and Practice, where each of them touched on the untold stories which I really thought spoke to the heart of cultural policy. And I just want to share each of them with you. Fiona McFarlane's Highway 13 deals in the most ingenious way with the reality that in crime fiction we always hear more about the person whose name really should not be remembered, rather than thinking about the lives of the universe of other people who are affected, and it's their stories that mustn't disappear. There's a chapter that is called The Podcast, and the whole writing style changes and changes fundamentally when you get to this, and you can hear the voices. And having read out the names of the people who had been killed by the serial killer, the presenter says this: "It's a lot of names. Every one of them was a whole world, full of love and curiosity, and every one of these worlds touched hundreds of others. This is our flower laid out for each of you." And in Theory of Practice, having been excited, enthralled and disappointed by different parts of Virginia Woolf's diary, the persona has been struggling with some what read as anti-Semitic references to Virginia Woolf's partner. And you start first with the specifics of that form of bigotry, but it then goes to a broader concept, which is part of my passion for cultural policy and part of what I feel tonight through you we are really achieving as a country. I was thinking about wolves. Of course Leonard minded when his wife called him the Jew or my Jew. Of course he didn't show that he minded. And this is where it gets to the key to that second pillar, a place for every story. That was the meaning of assimilation. It trained us not to show that we minded. It trained us to pass. It trained us to disappear. In writing, whether it be for children, teenage, for adults, whether it be in poetry, whether it be in fiction or non-fiction, you are making sure that people are seen. You are making sure that people who otherwise would have wondered, is it only me, find something that speaks so deeply, personally to them. And when cultural policy refers to making sure that we know ourselves, that we learn about each other, and that the rest of the world sees us, it's really talking about the reason every one of you is here tonight. Thank you for what you do.
Well, thank you, Minister Burke. I know you're probably not allowed to say what your favourite portfolio is, but I think we can all tell. Well, let's kick it off with the children's literature category. Books that you read over and over again, because if you don't, an irate toddler will scream at you. The judges were impressed by the strength of storytelling, the diversity of writers and themes, and the generally high-quality production values of the books submitted for consideration this year. Their shortlist epitomises the integrity and generosity of children's book creators who express and share themes of family, community and school life, travel, grief, anxiety, and sheer fun and mischief, with flair, kindness, and wisdom. 4 of the shortlisted books are picture books, reflecting the exceptional quality of this form, and the shortlist is compiled entirely of author illustrators, making 2025 the year of the author illustrator and the rest of us a bunch of underachievers. And the shortlist is
A Leaf Called Grief by Kelly Canby, Fremantle Press. Tender and emotionally rich, this book is a gentle exploration of grief, memory and healing. It captures the emotional reality and complexity of grief, offering a language for complex feelings and opening the door to meaningful conversations. Leo and Ralph by Peter Carnivus, University of Queensland Press. This kind and perceptive tale will resonate with children and adults who may not quite fit within the norm. Familiar themes of friendship, family and change underpin a gentle, humorous advocacy for the power of the imagination and the value of being different. Raymangirapu Dawo, When I Was a Little Girl, by Kylie Gachangurawu Munangor, Magabala Books. This dual language text is a testament to the resilience and continuity of Yolng Nok culture, inviting all Australians to learn, respect and reflect. A profound example of how language is knowledge, connection to country and cultural sovereignty. Everything You Ever Wanted to Know About the Tooth Fairy and Some Things You Didn't by Bryony Stewart, Hachette Australia. Blending imagination with information, this enchanting book cleverly combines facts and cultural insights, satisfying the curiosity of young readers while celebrating the enduring magic of childhood rituals. We Live in a Bus by Dave Petzold, Thames and Hudson, Australia. This gentle story celebrates the Australian road trip by following a young family as they take to the road in their bus. In its consideration of contemporary issues like housing, it carries an important message that we live in a land worthy of our wonder and respect.
Now, for those who are interested in production values, we don't have envelopes, which means the winner will unfold. And the winner for the children's literature category is Peter Carnivus for Leo and Ralph. Peter, microphone.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank the vintage clothing shop in Nambour on the Sunshine Coast for selling me this suit for $75. Next, I'd like to pay tribute to my fellow shortlisted authors. I'm a teacher librarian, not many of us left. I've been reading your beautiful books to my students over the past few months, and after reading them, I was not expecting to be the one giving a speech tonight, so congratulations on your beautiful work. Thank you to Writing Australia, Creative Australia and the judges. This is certainly the biggest thing that's happened to me in my career, so thank you for pulling my name out of the hat. I have the honour of being published by UQP. They take such care with their stories and their authors, and I owe a huge thanks to my publishers Claire and Kathy. They both helped shape this story, and it wouldn't be the book that it is without their vision and their talent. Thanks also to Kate, Jean, Madonna, everyone at UQP, and my super editor, Mark McLeod. I'd like to thank my family, especially my daughters watching the live stream back at the hotel. Sophie and Willow for being new and improved versions of their parents. And most importantly to my wife, Bronnie. Bronnie comes up with some of the best ideas in my stories. She's smarter than I am, she's funnier than I am, and one day she might be a better Scrabble player too. Finally, thank you to the children's writing community in Australia. They're also kind and generous and supportive. A fellow author, Caroline McGurl, told me recently that what we do is we put good things into the world by doing what we love. So thank you for rewarding me for doing what I love, and I now plan to spend the rest of my life putting more good things into the world. Thank you.
Next up is the young adult category. The YA judges described their shortlist as exciting, And they were particularly pleased by the variety of readers that it caters for, spanning all ages of the YA reading spectrum, including fantasy, dystopian speculative fiction, crime, contemporary realism, and non-fiction. Words you could also use to describe a young adult's bedroom. These stories explore themes which are especially relevant to young people, particularly friendship, courage, power and agency, fairness, compassion, family and identity. And the shortlist is
Anomaly by Emma Lord, Affirm Press. This impressive debut hooks the reader early with crisp, captivating prose and does not let them go. With a distinctly Australian setting rendered with wonderful, moody imagery, readers of all kinds will be eager for the sequel. The Anti-Racism Kit by Jin Young Kim and Sabina Patter-Warren, Allen and Unwin, Hardy Grant Children's Publishing. This well-researched and timely exploration of racism in contemporary Australia is filled with practical and actionable suggestions for the teen reader. A deeply necessary addition to Australian bookshelves, this book is unlike anything else to be found there. My Family and Other Suspects by Kate Emery, Allen and Unwin. Tightly plotted with high energy, this mystery combines cosy crime, a dash of romance, and the cringe of a forced holiday with your extended family, one of whom just got murdered. A fun, funny, and charming read with a striking voice. The Invocations by Crystal Sutherland, Penguin Random House Australia. Exploring grief, control, found family, and agency through an original lore of witchcraft, spells, and curses, this is a work from a novelist at the height of her powers, showcasing a truly impressive command of character and theme. Thunderhead by Sophie Beer, Allen and Unwin. This warm and exuberant novel is perfect for younger teenage readers who will take heart from its sophisticated exploration of friendship, as well as its depiction of life as a teenager with a chronic illness and an evolving disability.
And the winner for the young adult category is Crystal Sutherland for The Invocations. And we've got a video message for Crystal as well, I think. Do you want to come through and we'll get the photo?
What an extravagant honour and a true highlight of my career. Thank you so much. I wanted to pay my respect to elders past and present and say that I'm humbled to stand in the long line of Australian storytelling tradition. I'm so grateful to the judges, to my agent, Catherine Drayton, and to my publisher, Penguin Random House Australia, for wholeheartedly believing in this story from the beginning. This book was written for teenage girls. In a world that too often teaches them to fear or to shrink, I wanted to write a story where they're the ones who fight back, where their rage and resilience and magic become a source for survival and strength. I'm sorry I can't be there tonight to celebrate with all of you wonderful people, but I wanted to thank my mum for being there on my behalf to accept this award. Thank you.
And another big round of applause for Crystal's mum, who came all the way from Townsville to accept that award. Thank you. Well, you always hear people say, this is going to go down in the history books. And yeah, thanks to these next authors making those threats real. This category is for Australian history. This year's Australian History shortlist highlights the works of exceptional research, reach and prose that set a new benchmark for the field. These books challenge us to reconsider the past and imagine new futures, with Indigenous lives and histories alongside accounts of progressive and humane programs that should be a source of great national pride. Together they demonstrate the vitality and diversity of contemporary historical writing and show that despite the challenges of a digital age, Australian history publishing remains robust and dynamic. And the shortlist is...
Australia in 100 Words by Amanda Laugesen, New South Publishing. Combining a fascination with the origins and meanings of words with an expert knowledge of Australian history, Laugesen skillfully distills years of painstaking research into sparkling vignettes, exploring enduring themes of Australian history and culture. Warra Warra Wai by Darren Ricks and Craig Cormick. Scribner Australia, an imprint of Simon & Schuster Australia. Offering a genuinely new perspective on one of Australia's most recognisable foundational stories, this book demonstrates the validity and revelatory nature of Indigenous oral history and shows how truth-telling is built on careful listening. Critical Care, Nurses on the Front Line of Australia's AIDS Crisis by Geraldine Feller, New South Publishing. Critical Care is an inspiring history of a progressive public health strategy that should be cause for national pride. In an age when public health is a matter of urgent concern, this book is both a revealing history and a valuable source of guidance for the future. The Wild Reciter, Poetry and Popular Culture in Australia by Peter Kirkpatrick, Melbourne University Publishing. The Wild Reciter is a timely reminder of poetry's capacity to touch our lives. Whether by gramophone or our mobile phones, Kirkpatrick's wild reciters have found ever more ingenious ways to enchant Australian audiences. Naku Duruk, The Bark Petitions, How the People of Yirrkala Changed the Course of Australian Democracy by Claire Wright, Text Publishing. In 1963, the Yolngu people of Yirrkala presented to Parliament 4 bark petitions insisting on acknowledgement of their land rights. This remarkable book uses everyday Australian language to explore and illuminate this aspect of our complex history.
And the winner for the Australian History category is Geraldine Feller for Critical Care, Nurses on the Front Line of Australia's AIDS Crisis.
Geraldine Feller is currently on a small Greek island. Sounds lovely. And so her publisher, Harriet McKinney, is accepting the award on her behalf. Round of applause for Harriet. And here's something that Geraldine sent in earlier.
Hi everyone. The 2025 Prime Minister's Award for Australian History is a huge honour. I'm so pleased that the contribution of HIV and AIDS nurses and the unions that represented them is being acknowledged tonight in this way. I'm speaking to you today from Greece, but I live on and I wrote this book on the land of the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nations, land over which sovereignty was never ceded. I pay my deepest respect to the elders past and present, and to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the room this evening. There are many, many people that I need to thank. My loved ones, my family and friends, my extraordinary supervisors who oversaw this history first as an honours thesis, then as a PhD, before it became a book. UNSW Press, who not only published the book, but provided so much support. My colleagues and comrades at the University of Melbourne, Monash, and now at Macquarie. But first and foremost, I need to thank the nurses whose stories populate the pages of this book. Your care, your political activism, and your solidarity with gay men and other affected communities transformed HIV and AIDS care and the broader health system. Thank you for sharing your stories and your memories with me, even those that were painful and were difficult to return to. Many of the nurses who worked through some of the hardest and most devastating periods of Australia's AIDS crisis described it as a war, with AIDS wards on the front line. Their recollection of profound crisis and suffering decades ago calls on us to think about the healthcare workers in the world right now who are working on a very different kind of front line. In Gaza, hospitals have become the front line of a genocide, and healthcare workers are caring for their patients as bombs and bullets rain down on them. It is far, far past time for Australia to sanction Israel and to end the deadly trade in military parts.
I've just got a bit of an extended message. Hi, sorry for this break in proceedings, but Geraldine was aware that her speech may have been trimmed for length, and she's just emailed me from Greece to ask her whether I would complete her speech for her. So I'm going to do that now. My book is about nurses fighting for their patients' rights. It's also about their struggle to defend nursing expertise, their working conditions, and their profession. I want to take the opportunity to do the same and speak on behalf of all the shortlisted authors for the Australian History category. Each of us is deeply concerned about the future of historical scholarship in Australia. We call on the Albanese Labor government to abolish the Jobs Ready graduate package, a university funding structure that is devastating the humanities and social sciences. The impacts of this are apparent even within the 2025 shortlist. Of the 4 of us from the university sector, 3 are from institutions that are in the process of demolishing teaching and research in the humanities and social science. We are watching as many of our outstanding colleagues are forced into so-called redundancy. The crisis in our sector is in part thanks to the vicious managerialism that has infected university governance structures, but it is also a responsibility of government. Jobs Ready graduates has seen the cost of arts degrees balloon and enrolments plummet. Units and degrees are being cut across the country, and no regard for the public good that the arts and social sciences bring in terms of research, or for the importance of educating the next generation of young people in the deep and critical thinking that our disciplines offer. The Australian History category of the Prime Minister's Literary Awards is an important public acknowledgement of the contribution made by historical scholarship to our cultural and intellectual life. We urge the Albanese Labor government to do more than acknowledge the handful of us sitting in this room. We are at a critical juncture in which history making itself needs to be saved. Thank you again for the honour of this award.
Our next category is for poetry, and this one features remarkable collections spanning every stage of a writer's journey. 2 striking debuts, an early career poet, a mid-career voice, and 2 established poets. Together they reveal an impressive breadth of themes, a deep connection to place and the natural world, explorations of family, love and loss, the mysterious interplay between the everyday and the otherworldly, and a keen engagement with ecological awareness and activism in both global and local politics. This shortlist demonstrates with impressive variety and shared brilliance that Australian poetry is alive, thriving, and looking toward an extraordinary future. And the shortlist is
Makara by Barina South, Recent Work Press. A debut collection written for country and the resilience of its people, this poetic conversation holds a duality between the natural and modern worlds. Fused with a love of country, these poems move with a continuous flow to stir, comfort and provoke. The Other Side of Daylight, new and selected poems by David Brooks, University of Queensland Press. These finely observed poems burn with a passionate conviction for animal welfare and environmental conservation. Brooks is a poet of great ingenuity, whose contribution to Australian poetry is proven, via this volume, to be indispensable. Rock Flight by Hasib Hurani, Giramondo Publishing. At once literal, colloquial and visceral, Rock Flight refuses euphemism, a book with its heart on its sleeve and a stone in its hand. This urgent work speaks for generations subjected to attempted and ongoing dispossession and erasure. Companions, Ancestors, Inscriptions by Peter Boyle, Vagabond Press. A dazzling work of the imagination by a poet working at the height of his powers, this collection reimagines selfhood as mutable and relational, rather than fixed and singular, inviting the reader very slowly to transform into yourself. That Galloping Horse by Petra White, Shearsman Books. This impressive book pursues themes of childhood and its counterpart parenthood, love, work and death in newly evolving modes sophisticated in their meditative complexity. This is a highly satisfying collection of distinctive poetic material.
And the winner for the poetry category is David Brooks for The Other Side of Daylight, new and selected poems.
If I'm walking a little strangely today, it's because I've been pinching myself for about 3 weeks. I took very keenly the welcome to country and could say so many things about that, all of them in deep support. But I would like to acknowledge that I've written most of my recent poetry for the last 15 years in Darug and Gundungurra country in the Blue Mountains of the fabulous Blue Mountains of New South Wales. I was asked for a 1-minute speech and I've already blown that. Thank you so much. For almost 60 years, poetry has been my companion and my gyroscope. So thank you for this validation. Thanks to the Prime Minister, to Tony Burke, Minister for the Arts, to Creative Australia, to Writing Australia, to the University of Queensland Press, Madonna Duffy in particular, for their support for 20 years now. Thank you to Felicity Plunkett for her meticulous editing. There are so many others I should thank, but in the place of them all, at the head of them all, there are my beloved wife and best friend, Taya, sitting right there, without whom so much of this work quite simply could not have happened. And the judges of this award themselves, for their recognition and affirmation, yes, but even more for their explicit support for my work in animal rights, and by implication for the animals who inspire it. That means far more than I can say.
The non-fiction shortlist presents 5 outstanding works ranging from natural history and biography to memoir, reportage and inventive essay. Together they showcase both the classic traditions of Australian writing and bold reinventions of form, spanning local stories and global horizons. Ambitious in scope and style, these books braid narrative threads with insight and skill, balancing non-fiction's commitment to fact with imaginative ways of revealing what is often hidden or hard to name. And the shortlist is:
Deep Water by James Bradley, Penguin Random House. Blending memoir and research to produce a terrifying chronicle of the human impact on our oceans and its inhabitants, Deep Water is a call to protect our oceanic future, written with an abiding link between the head and the heart. The Pulling by Adele Dumont, Scribe Publications. Adele Dumont's condition of trichotillomania is not widely understood, and her raw honesty draws the reader in, generating a story that is immersive, discomforting, and a testimony to Dumont's resilience. Mean Streak by Rick Morton, HarperCollins Publishers. This painstaking account of the development of robo-debt, a federal government scheme to illegally pursue welfare recipients for fake debts, combines thorough journalistic methods with an empathetic understanding of the humans at the heart of the story. Fragile Creatures, a memoir by Kin Mint, Black Ink. In this calm, clear-sighted iteration of the impact of racism in Australia, Kin Mint considers with care and humanity how and why people have reacted to him as they did during his childhood in the 80s and 90s in a working-class Perth suburb. Cactus Pear for My Beloved by Samar Sabawi, Penguin Random House. A love story for a people and a place, Sabawi has written a parable of a multi-generational Palestinian family set within the history of Gaza. Beginning in contemporary Queensland, Sabawi shows us how to look back, but also walk forward.
And the winner for the non-fiction category is Rick Morton for Mean Streak.
Now, Rick Morton is enjoying the beautiful life in Paris. I don't know why everyone's holidaying without us, but fine. Although I know he would love to be here. And his publisher, Catherine Milne, is here to accept the award on his behalf.
Thank you so much for this award. It really is a privilege for the lifetime. Now, I am from Queensland and I'm not naturally an earnest joiner, but this occasion does require something of me. My ecological niche as a writer seems to be people in power making terrible decisions, and there is enough material there to take me to the grave. Still, today we see reprisals for people calling out the systemic slaughter of human beings as genocide. Our own government seeks to ignore the findings of the Robodebt Royal Commission to make access to information harder, not easier. And tens of thousands of welfare recipients are beholden to a private system of Centrelink cops who can ruin their lives. Now, Robodebt was both a legal and a moral failure, but if the only lesson we take from that is that we need to make our moral failures legal, then that would be a tragedy. Thank you to Catherine Milne, Shannon Kelly, my family, everyone who suffered with me to make this book, and particularly people who still experience injustice. This one's for you.
We are now at our final category, and this is for fiction. This year's fiction shortlist highlights the range and vitality of Australian writing, from deeply captivating historical fiction and richly imagined histories to daringly experimental forms. These books challenge and enlarge our view of the world, exploring identity, society, and the very nature of fiction itself. Together they reflect a literary culture alive to Australia's shifting social, political, and imaginative landscape. And we commend the writers, editors, and publishers who bring such ambitious work to readers. And the shortlist is:
Rapture by Emily Maguire, Allen and Unwin. Finely wrought, this novel brilliantly explores the restrictions placed on women's lives and the possibilities of subversion and escape. On one level, Rapture is a classic love story. On another, a beguiling and subversive meditation on faith, desire, and ambition. Highway 13 by Fiona McFarlane, Allen and Unwin. Drawing on our culture's deep interest in true crime, but bending our attention from the tabloid headline, this kaleidoscopic collection of stories is an exploration of a serial killer's effect, not only on the individual, but also on the national psyche. Theory and Practice by Michelle de Kretzer, Text Publishing. Elegant, playful, and razor-sharp, this novel tests readers' assumptions about lived experience and fiction, revealing how historical assumptions about gender, ethnicity, and class resonate across the past and into the present. Always Will Be, Stories of Goori Sovereignty from the Futures of the Tweed by Michaela Saunders, University of Queensland Press. This collection of exceptional short stories demonstrates how boundless literature can be and how it can be wielded to invite radical yet nourishing thought and action. Centering on the Tweed Goori community, they joyfully honour country and continuity. Juice by Tim Winton, Penguin Random House. Juice is a warning light. Set in the near future, this novel speaks with the urgency of today, taking readers into a dystopian future that could be ours unless we act now. What happens is hard to read at times, and that is the author's intention.
And the winner of the fiction category is Michelle de Cresta for Theory and Practice.
Thank you so much, and thank you to Selena Walker for her eloquent welcome to country. I'm delighted to accept this award, for which I'm indebted to the work, the vision, and the generosity of many, including the judges, the Minister and the Office for the Arts, Writing Australia, Text Publishing, my agent Sarah Lutchins, and my partner Chris. My heartfelt thanks to them all. Congratulations and solidarity to the brilliant writers on the shortlist, especially the genius Fiona McFarlane. She hates it when I say the genius Fiona McFarlane. So the genius Fiona McFarlane, who wins all the prizes I have to give. In his superb book, Rock Flight, Hasib Hirani writes, "A rock is not a rock until it's thrown. But we mustn't throw rocks in case they hit the guilty and upset the special envoy for the guilty. So I have this piece of paper instead. Tomorrow at my desk, I'll scrunch it up as Hasib advises. May the genocided guide my aim when I throw." Thank you. Free Palestine.
Man, writers are so badass. You guys are great. All right, friends, as the official part of the evening draws to a close, let's take a moment to give a final, well-deserved round of applause for all shortlisted authors and our winners. A huge thank you also to the National Library of Australia for not only hosting us in this beautiful space, but for being the guardians of our country's literary treasures. What a perfect setting for tonight's celebration. This evening has been a tribute to creativity in all its written form. We've applauded writers and illustrators and their works that challenge us, delight us, and help us see the world with fresh eyes. And I think a fitting thank you in most of the speeches to their partners who have supported them all. So thank you to the supporters as well. I can hear my music playing me up upstairs. But great books don't just end when you turn the last page. They stay with us, shaping how we see ourselves in this country. Through these books, we are better equipped to understand and face the challenges of the world around us as writers and readers who understand the value of Australian stories. On behalf of Creative Australia, thank you and have a wonderful evening. Good night.